Hi, this is Koiro with a slightly different topic for a video this time. And the backdrop for this video is twofold. One is that I actually got myself one of these lovely SixtyClone boards that actually is an exact replica of a Commodore 64 PCB from back in the day. And there are several other YouTubers that has done extensive videos on this. Among others, my friend Tommy at ovesen.net has done a good series of videos on this. But my take on this is that actually back in the day, in the end of 1985 and 86 and 87, I actually was working as a Commodore service technician, and I took this training course back in the day and actually was working with this, and most of the time I did service on Commodore 64s. And during that time I acquired a lot of the chips that's of course inside the Commodore, and I've been digging through old stock and looking into drawers and boxes and so on. So I'm going to populate this board without sacrificing anything that has come from either a dead or working Commodore 64. And I actually managed to dig up every chip for this board except the SID chip. I'm out of SID chips. And also the VIC-2 chip I have is a very old one, but it's working, possible. I have several NTSC chips, as I did a lot of conversions from NTSC to PAL machines back in the day. So when I was doing this work, I actually dug through my storage and found this. And this is the original service manual that I got from Commodore back in the day. And this is a binder with a collection of documents and schematics and service bulletins, part lists, and so on from back in the day. And today's video is going to be about that we browse through this to see what's inside. What was the information Commodore gave to their service people back in the day. Today I just have a very short video for you. At least at this time I think it would be rather short. I'm just going to show you some pages from my original Commodore service manual. This part of the manual is mostly from 1984, but the newest part of it is from 1985. And that predates some of the information that's available on the internet. At least there was some info that was not spread evenly in Norway as it was the other places, as this service manual actually was assembled by Commodore in Norway. And Commodore in Norway got some of the information from the United States, the USA, and they got some information from Germany. And Germany was at that time, I think, the ones that oversaw the Norwegian operation. I went on a course with Commodore to actually be authorized as a repairman, and that was in 1985. I got service bulletins from them at least through 86, but actually in this book I can't find any info from 1986. So I think by that time they actually had stripped down some of their Norwegian organization, and they didn't actually do any follow-up for repairs and stuff in Norway. They only sold the spare parts, I think. And this part of the service manual is from 1984. That means that it actually predates some of the manuals that now exist on the internet. And that at least true for the 1531 service manual. Although I'm missing some pages. They've probably been missing all along. We got these manuals from Commodore back in the day, and it's sad to say, but they was not every one of them was complete, and some of them was rather bad quality due to bad copying. The two schematics that I put away here is actually a preliminary service manual for the C128. I maybe look into that another time. And it's also the service manual for the C16 and the plus 4. It's not the complete manual, it was just the schematics. And what we have here is the same schematics that exist on the net. They actually call this the Hong Kong board, and this was the original revision that was sold here in Norway. And you can see here it actually states that this is a 5-pin DIN female for audio video, and my first Commodore 64 was one of those. It didn't have the silver label either on the main badge or by the power light, but it did have the square hole around the power supply, and it did have the 5-pin female DIN. This is an abnormality. I don't know if anyone ever has seen this before, but this is actually the schematic for the UF modulator that was an external unit for the VIC-20 back in the day. And this also, of course, worked on the Commodore 64 because they shared the same 5-pin pinout on the audio-video connector. So you can see here this is actually referring to the pins in the audio-video connector on this. And this schematic is a rather old revision. It's from 1982. And you can complain about the quality of the schematics that's present on the internet today, but actually the copies that was back in the day that you got original from Commodore was in no better shape. And even though maybe some of the writing on this is better than some of what's on the internet, that's not the cause for everything. You can also see here that this is the 5-pin female DIN on the audio video. This is the complete schematics. And this is the schematics for the short board 1541. This is actually of the video modulator on the early Commodore 64. And this is the version where the mixing of the video signals from Chroma and Luma didn't happen internal in the modulator. It was already mixed when it came in here. So this is the first revision of the UF modulator. Yes, and this is some additional information about the modulator, some internal project specification, and some pin out and some stuff. But this is a rather interesting one. As you know, today all of the parts for the various C64s. Yeah, most of them are obsolete, but back in the day, this was ordinary goods that you ordered from your Commodore. And you can see this is the actually order form from Commodore Computers Norway, and this was something you sent them on fax, or you could also call in your order. And here they have every one of the chips that's missing today. You also have the original C64 diagnostic kit that also contained the cables. And back in 1985, this was 490 Norwegian krona. And you can actually see here the SID chip 6581, it was 90 krona. The VIC chip was 160, and the processor and the 6526 was actually 60 krona each. And the same with the basic kernel and character ROMs. And then you paid $200 for the power supply, $35 for the RF cable. The switch actually cost you $15, and the modulator PCB was 130. And you also have the parts for the VIC-20, and you have the miscellaneous part down here. And here you have memory chips, and this was really expensive back in the day. One chip, 1 bit 64 kilobyte, it was 70 Norwegian krona. So one memory chip for the 64 was actually $10 more than the CPU. Yeah, and this is the 4066 analog switch, $15, and so on. And when I did this repair, we often bought this in quantities. And even though just a few years ago, before the boom started and people took their Commodore 64s down from the attic and started playing around with them, I actually had stock of most of these chips, and I actually still have some. I've burnt all my stocks on the 6569 VIC chips with converting NTSC computers to PAL computers, and the 6581 sound chip. I actually had some stock of those too. Back just a few years ago, it was that guy that sold these dual SID adapter cards that you put into your C64, and I don't remember his name now, but he actually bought 10 6581s from me, and I don't remember what he paid for them, but I think it was under 1,000 krona. Basic ROM, I still have some new ones. Kernel ROMs I still have. Character ROMs, I might have some. I am just out of 6510 CPUs. 6526 IO chips, I have 2 new old stock left. And I have this 82S100, that's the PLA chip. I actually have 1 or 2 of those also new. That's been laying around from back in the day. I also have a couple of 6502 CPUs and some 6522 IO chips. And that was when people came around with floppy drives and wanted to fix them. And I've used some of them, but I have some left. I also have some of the special VIC-20 chips, but not many of them from back in the day. This service manual, it contains some more versions of the schematic, and this is actually one of the clearer ones where you actually can read some of the stuff. This is a schematic that's a bit newer. You can see this is a version where you have the 7-pin audio video connector, and this is on A4 paper, but it's actually not a bad copy, so a lot of the text is actually readable on this. I know it's not a good quality on this video, but this I actually can try to make a scanning of. And this is the same one that I showed you before, just A4. This is the 5-pin DIN connector. This is just a close-up of the 6510 CPU. And this actually showed that they actually had some master schematics somewhere in good maybe A1, A0 size that they could make copies of. Just some notes I made back in the day. And you have some newer Shamatics. This is the one with the 7-pin connector, and it's the schematics of the memory, the ROMs, and the VIC chip. And you can also see that this has the newer RF modulator, where the mixing of the signals is inside the modulator and not with these external transistors outside. And this also have the 7701 clock chip, external clock source for the VIC chip. The older boards has a bunch of other chips to do the PLL synthesizers to get these frequencies. This is just the CPU and 6526 side of the same schematics. And here we have again an older schematic. You can see here the external circuitry that was required to mix the audio video, and to also get, this is what's needed to have the phase loop to get an exact oscillator for the video circuitry. This is just the other side of the same. And this is the C2N cassette unit. It comes with operating instructions, but that's actually not what's inside here. It actually is the schematics. You have the picture of the printed circuit boards, the signals, the leads, and how they was connected. And this is what's made TP here. It's test points where you could measure what's working. And you also have, this was marked with old. So this is another version of this PCB. And even though this C2N cassette, they have 5 or 6 different revisions of this. From the outside, they don't look that much different, but they're quite different inside. And here is also mentioned that they locate the cassette interface port 2 on the PET, 1 on the VIC. So this service information here is predating the C64. And this is service information, and this is the service bulletins that Commodore actually released for this. This is how you adjust the azimuth, and cleaning and demagnetizing the tape head. That was actually a thing back in the day. And they also have the service information with this troubleshooting diagram. And here is what you should measure at the various test points that we saw earlier. And they describe that this is a sine wave and this is a square wave, and what interval the voltage should be. On the schematics here, it actually says PET cassette. And this was a third-party azimuth adjusting band, and this was something that you actually sold back in the day to end users. Dealer paid 80 for this, and they sold it for 148. And this is the start of the technical manual for the C64. And this manual was assembled in 1985. So the oldest document in here is from 1985. This is a revision of the same. It's out there on the internet. Simmers.net have some versions of this, and I also seen others. It also describes the C64 diagnostic test, and this is an early revision of this test. As you can see, they state here, this documentation is from 1983, quite early in the history of the Commodore 64, and they describe everything with what's wrong with the different codes and so on. And here they actually describe how you should connect the test harness. And they also describe, and this was a service bulletin from the 31st of August 1984. They actually state that the kernel ROM had been updated. So the C64 diagnostic version actually misled us to think that the kernel ROM chip was bad. So you have to use the latest revision of the diagnostic version to actually use it, the latest 03 kernel revision. I think they actually changed the diagnostic ROMs to not use the checksums that they actually check here to see if this is bad, since the newer diagnostics doesn't say that the kernel is bad even though you have an old revision. The following pages goes on to actually list symptoms, and they suggest what's wrong. Missing colors. Change the 6569, adjust the R7020 in the oscillator box, and the oscillator box was actually the compartment that contained all the electronics before they moved this into the 7701 chip in later revisions of the board. And we can see the date of this is 11th of April in 1985. This is a bit newer, 11th in 785. And some of this is translated into Norwegian. This is written on a typewriter. It's not written on a computer actually, and it's quite nostalgic to see some of this where they actually have written this down with typewriters when actually the Commodore 64 was a perfectly good word processor if you wanted to use it. And on the Commodore 64 you actually could have the Norwegian character set. And what you did back in the day, you got 6 stickers to put on your keyboard, because they changed around on some of the keys. And you also have to change 2 of the ROM chips. You have to change the character set and the kernel. And the reason you have to change the character set is of course to get the Norwegian characters put into the character set. And the other revision is because you have to actually change the kernel to do the remapping of the keys. You have to put this sticker on these keys. This was the original writing on the key, and you have to put those on these stickers. In this service info we can read that bad RAM on the C64 can be caused by a broken rocker switch. And they state that if you break a little piece of plastic inside the switch, there is a possibility to make a shortcut between the 5 volt and the 9 volt in the switch. And if you get 9 volt AC on the 5 volt rail, you of course get a very high voltage on the 5 volt rail and the memory chips. And this is the same thing that happens if you have an original power brick and you have not changed the 7005 regulator inside that with a modern switching replacement. So they actually advise, if you have a blue rocker switch on your Commodore, most of mine actually have this red one, but I have some with the blue switch, and they also have a bad RAM chips, please replace the rocker switch as well. And here they actually describe the 7701 or 8701 MOS chip that was in what they call here the C64B revision. And this was additional information that we got sent regularly from Commodore when there came upgrades. Yes, and this is the spare parts catalog, and as you can see, this is in German writing, and very much of the Commodore business in Norway actually happened through Germany. So the cooperation between the Norwegian and the German office was quite close back in the day. So you have the 6510 Shamatics, you have all the part lists. And you have the VIC 1451, and this is actually a German version for some of this, but actually some of the texts that in here is coming from USA, because this is a mix of English and German language on these. These we actually used back in the day to check the functioning of the 1541. Yes, you see different. This was the old long board, and this was the short board. And I remember also we get some replacement heat sinks for these, because these had these small heat sinks around these voltage regulators, but there was this replacement that was a larger heat sink here. Yes, and here they describe the alignment procedure. Yeah, what you need to align the alignment disc, and they have this shiz of the unit. I remember back in the day I only had this overview of this. I didn't have the one with a small lever instead of this mechanism. So back here it's all English. And this is the same as the others. This is the service bulletins. The drive runs all the time and the reading LED is blinking. And they advise us to change EC1, that's the ROM chip on this drive. And this is something we could do back in the day, but it's not longer feasible. The 1541 does not format and save, but it loads okay. And the adjustments is okay, but the error disappear if you take a new drive unit and replace the old one with. And then you have to change the read write head. And that's not something that's easily done in these days. And in the back of the book there is the schematics for the VIC 20. We didn't do much work on them because back in 1985 and 1986, when I actually worked with this, there was not many VIC 20s left that was in use in Norway. Yes, and that's what's inside my old Commodore service manual from back in the day. I think everything of this information is available on the internet. But I find that I still use this paper copy sometimes. I have not done much C64 reparations lately, but I actually did quite a bit about 10 years ago. There was this first wave of people taking their old C64s back from the attic. And that's it for this video. I hope you learned something. If you want to comment on the video, whatever, please make a comment. And if you want more content like this, old information or service bulletins and stuff, I can dig deeper into my library and come back to you with some more of this.